This is your story, and of course we are now actually focusing on the third and last day of the Agricultural Productivity Program for Southern Africa, and the program is hosted by the World Bank funded initiative coordinated by the Center for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development for Southern Africa. The implementation of research findings are showing considerable results and impacts in the SADEC region. And for more on this, we're joined by Sara Mbago-Bhunu, who is Regional Director of the Agricultural Development Fund. Thank you very much for coming to our program.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Well, yesterday actually we were speaking to other delegates from your conference about their inputs at this meeting in as far as research developments in the areas like Zambia, Kenya, Malawi, and so forth. So far, what has been highlighted at the conference to address some of the impacts of the research that has been made?
Actually, the International Fund for Agricultural Development is got a portfolio of grants in the region that are really looking at innovative ways of equipping farmers with the latest technology to combat the drought that is happening here, to combat climate change, to also look at nutrition, sensitive nutrition related inputs and technologies that can improve their health outcomes. We're also really looking at how we can integrate the aspects of ICT and new technologies to enable them to access the market, have information about the market, and even climate information. So really the delegates brought a rich pool of knowledge. We have about 61 active grants throughout the region. We even have one active for South Africa, really looking at youth, opportunities for incubating youth in agribusiness, opening up the door for business opportunities for them to harness and take a hold of. So it's really been very rich, and we want to look at these solutions and say how can we then leverage the solutions from our grant portfolio into our loan portfolio. And we work in 22 countries across Eastern Southern Africa, and our borrowers are really looking forward to the innovations that this conference will bring.
For somebody who's having a global view about agricultural funding in the SADC region, they would say that there's different strokes for different folks. When you speak of Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Malawi, and so forth, you're looking at countries where there isn't a debate about access to land and access to funding. Like there's a problem in South Africa concerning black people wanting to get into farming but not having access to land. How is then this going to help South Africans and apply the very same impacts of the research that has been found to deal with climate change and deal with issues of food security?
I think there's lots of emerging lessons coming out from the rest of Africa, even from the Horn of Africa, not only around land access models, but also just around natural resource management and how to restore land in our natural capital, how to use water more efficiently for agriculture, all these technologies that will allow us to really take our subsistence farmers from a subsistence space, worried about food security, to a more commercial space which will enable them to operate more independently and become food secure. Very specifically for South Africa, I think tenure, and when in our language we talk about land tenure. And land tenure security is one thing, being able to open up land markets that can work effectively, looking at leasing arrangements, leasing for agricultural seasons, looking at finance which could unlock people with title deeds to allow entrepreneurial young people, women, even men to come in and make use of that land. And I think that's the issue. Can you have a system of land tenure here that is going to be inclusive and enabling and which is regulated? I think it's more around that than anything else. And there's very good lessons that are being drawn as far as Kenya on how that could work for short-term season crops, for more commercial crops, medium-term, that could be for export and so on.
Is this actually having the downside in as far as creating a hype that there's going to be a fund available for people who are interested in farming, and the hype of access to land, that you will find people who know nothing about farming, but because they heard the word funding, and there would be a chicken run, and you would create a serious problem for your front office, people queuing up demanding that money that could have been announced.
I just want to really clarify. As I said, the International Fund for Agricultural Development has two main windows at the moment for engagement. And this conference was really focusing on our grants window. And so we use those grants for innovation. And therefore, the innovation and the discussions we're having are not really funding directly to communities or to individuals who would then use that to access, let's say, land or other assets to go into productive farming. The innovative funds are really meant to showcase and to work along with select groups to demonstrate how vertical farming, for instance, aquaculture, commercial aquaculture, even animal husbandry, even using hydroponics could work for young people. Mm-hmm. So once there's proof of concept, once there is actually a demonstration of how these things could work in a sort of incubator setting, then we do invite discussions and talks with the government of the Republic of South Africa to actually engage with us.
So somebody who's watching this interview, actually, who has to really get this fund? Mm-hmm. Yeah, who has to get it, and how do they get it? Is it at national level, or how does it apply with the South African case study?
Yeah, okay. So the grant funding is actually being hosted by the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. They're the host of it. And the idea is to really learn from experiences, as I stated, from Brazil, even from the rest of Africa, even as far as India, around youth implication in agriculture and encouraging young people to tap into the opportunities in the food system. So it's not only about agriculture, but really looking at the food system as a whole. And so the idea there is to learn those lessons and then pilot them here. So that fund is not, as I stated before, readily accessible to the general public or to farmer groups and cooperatives and the like. What would happen afterwards, after this grant has actually demonstrated what could happen and the possibilities in the South African context, then we would be in further talks with the government of the Republic of South Africa, and we could actually look at a blend finance type of solution or specific investment for the South African government to roll out in specific provinces where there's already production basins, very active smallholders, and there would be then a scaling up of this solution in another phase. So really this is the very beginning, the very start of our engagement with the government, with the Ministry of Agriculture. We're very excited about it because it's the very first opportunity to engage with them centrally. Having said that, of course, IFAD has been working with Cape Town University, tapping into the expertise that exists in South Africa to do climate vulnerability studies in around 8 other countries in Southern Africa. So we've been working with South Africa in different ways, but I think this is really exciting because it opens up the door for something very concrete coming forward. And as you know, we also have our regional hub based in Johannesburg. So we have a whole team of experts here ready on the call, and they're ready to engage not only with South Africa, but with also the other countries.
We will engage with them in as far as progress that would be made in the short term. But thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you for having me.
Right. Sara Mbago-Bhunu is Regional Director of the Agricultural Development Fund. Palisa.